Hello and welcome to today's episode that deals with Photoshop. I am Sakshi Mandwal and our subject expert for today is Ashish Garg, who is a professional and has been teaching at Maya Academy of Advanced Cinematics from last 5 years. Today, we will be discussing about some interesting graphics softwares. Though there are lots of graphics and image editing softwares, Photoshop is the most popular software around the world. Let's talk about Adobe Photoshop now. Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is an image editing software developed and published by Adobe Systems Incorporated. This software is developed using C++ language. Adobe Photoshop is also known as raster graphics editor. This software is available in 27 languages. Adobe Photoshop Cs5 is the 12th major release of Adobe Photoshop. Adobe only supports Windows and Macintosh versions of Photoshop, but using Wine, Photoshop CS5 can run well on Linux as well.
Photoshop requires no real introduction. You may never have used the program, but you have certainly heard of it and you know what it can do. However, many people don't realize that there's far more to it than smoothing out the wrinkles of a cosmopolitan cover girl. While Photoshop is useful as an editing tool for the modeling industry, it has also proved a fundamental weapon in the arsenal of marketers, advertisers, graphic designers, photographers, newspaper and magazine editors, animators, and live action filmmakers as well, event planners, and many other besides. Whether or not your profession is listed above, learning the best practices of Photoshop can only help you in today's world. It is almost impossible to use or even learn all of the Photoshop's tool to their maximum benefit. Photoshop has been around since 1982. That's around 25 years of troubleshooting and advancing software. The fields of mass communication, journalism, and photography have undergone rapid and profound changes in recent years. One of the biggest issues impacting both industries in the advent of digital editing and publishing software. In the case of photojournalists, the range of digital retouching software such as Photoshop has in many ways made their jobs easier, allowing for rapid editing to lighting, cropping, and the powerful ability to repair flaws. Results that once may have taken a combination of skills and painstaking efforts to accomplish are now achievable with a few clicks of a mouse. And while this statement oversimplifies the skills and efforts still required to produce a quality photo, any photographer will tell you that digital darkroom software is one of the most powerful tools in his or her arsenal.
History of Photoshop. Photoshop has been a part of every web designer's life since they picked up their first mouse. On February 10, 2010, Photoshop turned 20. For each version and major feature listed, we couldn't help but think, did Photoshop ever exist without that feature? Some of the minor details are fun too, such as the one-liner Easter eggs that Photoshop developers hid in some versions and the fact that the most current versions of Adobe Photoshop CS are equipped with anti-counterfeiting measures for multiple world currencies. We need to every day thank John Knowles and Adobe for making all of our lives more awesome. One of the most impressive things about the company is the fact that one gifted family consisting of an engineering professor, a PhD engineering student, and a talented special effects whiz working at Industrial Light and Magic came up with the core idea of Photoshop. Thomas Knoll, a PhD student, is still heavily involved with Photoshop even years later. Glenn Knoll was a college professor with 2 sons and 2 hobbies, computers and photography. He had a dark room in his basement and an Apple II Plus that he was allowed to bring home from work. Thomas Knoll adopted his father's photography habit throughout high school, while his brother, John Knoll, purchased one of the first Macs available to the public. Thomas Knoll was a PhD student studying engineering at the University of Michigan. His brother was working at Industrial Light and Magic. Thomas Knoll wrote a subroutine for a program to translate monochrome images on his monitor to grayscale. The successful subroutine led Knoll to create more, and very soon he had a number of processes for achieving photographic effects on digital images. After his brother John saw what Thomas was doing, he recommended that Thomas turn what he was doing into a full-featured image editor. The combination of Thomas's programming abilities with John's pragmatic design background led to a collaboration between the two brothers to develop more processes and improve on the initial application. Even though the process led to interruption in Thomas's thesis work, the brothers released Image Pro in 1988. John suggested that they begin to sell Image Pro as an application. Within 6 months, the brothers had a partnership with a company that manufactured scanners, Barney Scan. They purchased 200 copies of the program to ship with their scanners. They called on Supermac and Aldus, but were turned away at both, a move that Aldus would come to seriously regret. Shortly after, the Knoll brothers struck gold when they won over Adobe management with their product and formed a licensing partnership with Adobe that was to launch their software and Adobe into the stratosphere. In February of 1990, Adobe 1.0 was released. Adobe's 2003 Creative Suite rebranding led to Adobe Photoshop 8's renaming to Adobe Photoshop CS. Thus, Adobe Photoshop Cs5 is the 12th major release of Adobe Photoshop. The CS rebranding also resulted in Adobe offering numerous software packages containing multiple Adobe programs for a reduced price. Adobe Photoshop is released in 2 editions, Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Photoshop Extended, with the Extended having extra 3D image creation, motion graphics editing, and advanced image analysis features. Adobe Photoshop Extended is included in all of Adobe's Creative Suite offerings except Design Standard, which includes the Adobe Photoshop Edition. Alongside Photoshop and Photoshop Extended, Adobe also publishes Photoshop Elements and Photoshop Lightroom, collectively called the Adobe Photoshop family. In 2008, Adobe released Adobe Photoshop Express, a free web-based image editing tool to edit photos directly on blogs and social networking sites. In 2011, a version was released for the Android operating systems and the iOS operating system. File formats in Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop files sometimes have the file extension .psd, which stands for Photoshop Document. A PSD file stores an image with support for most imaging options available in Photoshop. These include layers with masks, color spaces, ICC profiles, CMYK mode used for commercial printing, transparency, text, alpha channels and spot colors, clipping paths and due tone settings. A PSD file has a maximum height and width of 30,000 pixels. Photoshop files sometimes have the file extension .psb, which stands for Photoshop Big, also known as Large Document Format. Because of Photoshop's popularity, PSD files are widely used and supported to some extent by most competing softwares. The .psd file format can be exported to and from Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Premiere Pro, and After Effects to make professional standard DVDs and provide non-linear editing and special effects services such as backgrounds, textures, and so on for television, film, and the web. Photoshop's primary strength is as a pixel-based image editor, unlike vector-based image editors. Photoshop is available in the following languages: Brazilian, Portuguese, Chinese simplified, Chinese traditional, Czech, Danish, Dutch, English, Finnish, French, and German, Hungarian, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Norwegian, Polish, Romanian, Russian, Spanish, Swedish, Turkish, Ukrainian. The Arabic, Greek, and Hebrew versions are available from Winsoft. Major use of Adobe Photoshop: photograph manipulation, painting plus drawing, graphic design plus illustration plus page layout, typography, animation cells, sprites and GIF animations, web images, texturing for 3D models, creating backgrounds or matte paintings for films, poster design. Industry of Photoshop. One of the most prolific and exponentially valuable internet tools is Adobe's Photoshop software. But this software has more far-reaching possibilities than the normal industrial users it sees now. Presently, this software is used in web design and graphic creation business fronts, especially online. But what other industries and professions can benefit from Photoshop? Well, one of the most obvious ones is businesses that produce graphic designed items. These can be things like t-shirts, coffee mugs, and other personalized or gag items. Customers or clients can send in their own photos and ask for it to be enhanced in a certain way. That is especially useful since not everyone knows how to use Photoshop that way. Another one is graphic web design or personalized social networking page templates. Imagine having a picture of yourself or your kids as your MySpace profile page background. In the area of web design, the possibilities are truly endless with Photoshop. These folks can create page templates, buttons, or any type of graphic that people are in the market for. But there are some industries that can benefit that you may not have thought of. The add-ons that exist for Photoshop make it a widely versatile tool for manufacturers of machinery parts and service repair manuals. Since the graphics are loaded into Photoshop as a non-graphic format, the possibilities are limitless as to what can be done with them. For instance, using Adobe's Fireworks add-on, graphics can be given life and become animated at a level not seen before. Images can be loaded from CAD software, brought into the Photoshop program, and then turned in a real-time environment. This essentially gives the item a three-dimensional feel and view. In the area of parts and repair manuals, this can be extremely helpful since the finished pages can be saved as an internet file and posted for repair technicians to view online from anywhere in the world. Some of the software add-ons even allow you to create a moving real-time animation of a repair procedure step by step. This is a huge benefit to companies that run service personnel overseas when questions come up. Time, money, and prestige are saved as a result. Photoshop can even be a benefit to video game walkthrough writers. A screenshot can be taken of progressive screens and captioned when instructions or helpful information. Novice players can suddenly play like world-class pros in a fraction of the time without the frustration of the learning curve. For this, they are willing to pay and pay handsomely. As you can see, Photoshop can be used in many industries and the uses are only limited by the user's imagination. Many internet marketers have used Adobe Photoshop's PDF format for many years to display information to customers. It really is surprising that so few of those people took advantage of Photoshop's full capabilities. Animations, colored fonts, and hyperlinked text or graphics are all possible inside the Photoshop software, and it can be a benefit to your business. All you have to do is try it and see.
Photoshop is one of the most popular software, and almost every studio, printing house, web development studio, photographers and several other industry using Photoshop to fulfill their clients' need. I must say that this is the finest tool for editing the image. Photoshop is the base for every other designing software you will learn in your academics. It has several options which will be almost same in other designing applications. Layer selection options like pen tool, marquee tool are almost same in other applications like Adobe Illustrator, Corel Draw, Corel Paint, and in some 3D applications like Autodesk 3ds Max and Autodesk Maya. Learning resources and forums. There are many learning resources and forums which can be so much useful for you. I am here mentioning some of the names which will help you. In all those forums you can post some of your works, and some of the finest artists around the world will see your work and can give you suggestions and help you to improve the things. There is an Indian forum running by Indian professionals named www.cgtantra.com. There is another international forum for artists called www.cgtalk.com. is one of the world's biggest forum for the artist, and world's greatest artist presence is there. There is another forum called www.cgarena.com and www.photoshopgurus.com, forums.adobe.com, creativecow.net. In these links you will find some good tutorials for Photoshop. So here were some of the tips from my side. I hope you liked it, and the web links I have given you are really amazing. If you go through all of the links, especially CG Tantra and CG Talk, will be good for you. Register yourself on every forum, create your IDs there to access all the sections.
Career using Photoshop. After getting trained in Photoshop, you can start your career in various fields. Matte painting. Matte painting is a painted representation of landscape, backgrounds, set or distant location that allows filmmakers to create the illusion of an environment that would otherwise be too expensive or impossible to build or visit. Digital painting. In digital painting, digital painters add color to the line images created by animators. They may scan the drawings they receive from the animation department and, when required, clean up the line work on a computer before coloring. Texturing artist for films and games. A texture artist is an individual who develops textures from digital media, usually for video games, movies, websites, and television shows. These textures can be in the form of 2D or rarely 3D art that may be overlaid onto a polygon mesh to create a realistic 3D model. Graphic designers. A graphic designer is a professional within the graphic design and graphic arts industry who assembles together images, typography, or motion graphics to create a piece of design. Web design field. Web design is a broad term covering many different skills and disciplines that are used in the production and maintenance of websites. The different areas of web design include web graphic design, interface design, authoring, including standardized code and proprietary software, user experience design, and search engine optimization. Logo designer. A logo is a graphic mark or emblem commonly used by commercial enterprises, organizations, and even individuals to aid and promote instant public recognition. Designer in ad agencies. An advertising agency or an ad agency is a service business dedicated to creating, planning, and handling advertising, and sometimes other forms of promotion for its clients. An ad agency is independent from the client and provides an outside point of view to the effort of selling the client's products or services. Designer with any newspaper or printing. Printing is a process for reproducing text and images, typically with ink on paper using a printing press. It is often carried out as a large-scale industrial process and is an essential part of publishing and transaction printing. Photo retouching artist. Photo manipulation is the application of image editing techniques to photographs in order to create an illusion or deception, in contrast to mere enhancement or correction through analog or digital means. Photo restoration. Photo restoration is the practice of restoring a photograph which has been damaged by natural, man-made or environmental causes or simply affected by age or neglect. Technical requirement to use Photoshop software. There are some technical requirements for using the Photoshop latest versions like CS3, CS4 or CS5. Operating system. PCs running Adobe Photoshop CS5 must have Windows XP with Service Pack 3 or greater installed, Windows Vista Home Premium with Service Pack 1 or greater installed, Windows Vista Business with Service Pack 1 or greater installed, Windows Vista Ultimate with Service Pack 1 or greater installed, Windows Vista Enterprise with Service Pack 1 or greater installed, or Microsoft Windows 7. Macintosh users must have Mac OS X version 10.5.7 or 10.6 installed. CPU. PCs running Adobe Photoshop require an Intel Pentium 4 or AMD Athlon 64 microprocessor. Macs require multi-core Intel processor. Hard drive space. Adobe Photoshop CS5 requires 1 GB of free hard drive space to accommodate the full installation on a PC. 2 GB of free hard drive space is required for Mac users. Random access memory, RAM. 1 GB of RAM is required to run Adobe Photoshop CS5 on either a PC or a Mac. Disk drive. A DVD-ROM drive is required to install Adobe Photoshop CS5 on either a PC or a Mac. Graphics. A 16-bit color display is required to run Adobe Photoshop CS5 on either a PC or a Mac. A minimum screen resolution of 1024 × 768 is also required, though the developers recommend a resolution of 1280 × 800. 256 MB of video RAM is also required. Internet. A high-speed broadband internet connection is required for users who wish to take advantage of Adobe's online features. This includes online updates, add-ons, and technical support for your software.
Plugins for Photoshop. Photoshop functionality can be extended by add-on programs called plugins. Adobe creates some plugins such as Adobe Camera Raw, but third-party companies develop most plugins according to Adobe specifications. Some are free and some are commercial softwares. Most plugins work with only Photoshop or Photoshop compatible hosts, but a few can also be run as standalone applications. There are various types of plugins such as filter, export, import, selection and automation. The most popular plugins are the filter plugins, available under the filter menu in Photoshop. Filter plugins can either modify the current image or create content. Below are some popular types of plugins and some well-known companies associated with them. Color correction plugins like Alien Skin software, Nick software, 11 software, Topaz Labs software, the plugin site, etc. Special effect plugins, Alien Skin software, Auto Effects software, AB Browse, Flaming Pier software, etc. Adobe Camera Raw, also known as ACR and Camera Raw. It is special plugin supplied free by Adobe, used primarily to read and process so that the resultant image can be processed by Photoshop. You use Camera Raw by opening an image file rather than using the filter menu.
In this episode, we discussed about Adobe Photoshop history and talked about the inventor of Photoshop software. It's really great and fortunate for us that John Knoll invented this amazing application for us so that we can paint our imagination digitally. Then, we learned about how Photoshop came into the market and became the first choice for the graphic designers and design industry around the world. Also, we had a talk about the several uses of the Photoshop and file formats. We discussed about the amazing opportunities an artist can choose in the industry of Photoshop. I hope you all liked this episode. I hope this episode was informative. But the upcoming episodes will be more interesting and informative because in our future episodes we will be learning the Photoshop software. So stay tuned and install Photoshop software on your personal computers. In our future episode, we will be discussing about the Photoshop software. This is all we have for you for today. Thank you and goodbye.